Okay, Masechet Eruvin, we are on Daf Mem 40. Extremely relevant daf. Really couldn't get better timing. Right before Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be talking about some of the tefillot on Rosh Hashanah, and so this is really be good to keep in mind. All right, we're going to start off with benefiting from the work of non-Jews, specifically if they bring something from outside of the Techum. Which we were talking about yesterday, and so we have two stories, one about a turnip and one about myrtles. And then we'll ask the question, should we mention Rosh Chodesh in the prayers for Rosh Hashanah? Because after all, Rosh Hashanah is also Rosh Chodesh. Yet, if you look in our tefillot, we don't say the regular prayers for Rosh Chodesh, we don't really mention Rosh Chodesh. So that's curious why we don't. And so we'll see there some different opinions and our conclusion. And then the last question will be, should we say Shehehiyanu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? And we will conclude that yes, we do, which is in fact the halacha. So, all right, very relevant, and we will jump right in with the first story, which is here. Okay, Hahu lifta, so da'atelim choza, a turnip showed up in Mechoza, Nefak Rava Chazia Dichmisha. Some people were, non-Jews were selling these turnips. Rava went and saw that they were already withered out. So Rava said that the Jews are allowed to buy them, not on Yom Tov, but rather immediately after Yom Tov. Why? Because since they're withered out, that means for sure they were not picked today. They are not fresh, and so therefore the Gentiles did not do the work today. Otherwise, if the non-Jews had picked them today in mind to sell it to the Jews, then the Jew would not be able to benefit from on Yom Tov, and would even have to wait enough time afterwards to be able to give it that enough time that they would be able to pick it and bring it there. And so therefore, since they were already picked from yesterday, that's no problem. They can buy it immediately after Yom Tov. Right? What's your problem? What are you afraid of? That they brought it out from outside Techum Shabbat, and so they're violating. This is not as bad as uprooting, but still they're doing it something for you on Shabbat. We saw the halacha that if someone brings something outside the Techum for one Jew, then that Jew cannot use it, but another Jew can, because it wasn't brought for that person, and then that would be fine. And all the more so if they brought it for the general people, they brought it for non-Jews to buy in the city of Mechoza. Mechoza was a cosmopolitan city. It was a suburb of the Persian capital. So lots of people there would buy it. So therefore, Rava saw all that and said you can buy it immediately after Yom Tov. However, then Rava saw, once he allowed the Jews to start buying, then in the future times, future holidays and maybe Shabbat too, then the non-Jewish seller said, oh, there's a Jewish market here also. And now they brought even more produce in mind specifically for the Jews. So in that case, Rava said, okay, now you cannot buy it immediately after Shabbat, because obviously they are bringing it, they are preparing it specifically for the Jews. Instead, they would have to wait. If their farm is an hour away, they would have to wait an hour after Yom Tov in order to be able to buy it. Okay, that's the story number one. And the second story, Hanhu b'nei Genana de gazu lehu asa b'yom tov sheni. So we had these canopy makers they themselves were Jewish, but they had some myrtles cut down for them on the second day of Yom Tov. In other words, they got non-Jews were cutting down myrtles so to use as raw material for them to use. You see that they were lenient on Yom Tov Sheni. They weren't taking it so seriously. Okay. So in the evening, Ravina said, immediately after the second day of Yom Tov, he said you can smell them right away. You could use them for Havdalah well, we don't have this. I mean, we have the Allah for after Yom Tov, but let's say it was Shabbat also. And so you can smell them right away. You can benefit from them right away. And this is strange because these non-Jews violated Yom Tov for the sake of the Jews. They cut it down for a Jew. Therefore, a Jew should not be able to have any benefit from it until he waits the time it would take for them to do it after Yom Tov is over, not immediately after. So that's the question that Amar leRava bar Tachlifa leRavina desar lehumor mipnei shenan bnei Torah. It says you should prohibit this to them because these people, that live there, the Jews are not knowledgeable in the Torah, and if you give them this leniency, they're going to come and make other leniencies also. In other words, this particular example might be okay because these myrtles were picked in order to use as building material, not as perfume. So therefore, maybe in this case you could say it's allowed because they're using it in a different way than was intended. But the problem is, even if you find the technical reason why it's okay, they're not going to know the reason. And they're going to think that you are allowed to benefit from anything that a non-Jew does for you immediately after Yom Tov. And they're going to come to make mistakes. And therefore, you should not allow it. Okay, Matkif Rav Shema'aya, Tama denan b'nei Torah. How b'nei Torah shareh? So Rav Shema'aya asks us, what? Only because they're not b'nei Torah? Would it be allowed if they were b'nei Torah? Haba'inan b'chdei she'asu. You always have to wait the amount of time it would take in order for it to be prepared. So Azar Shailuhu leRava, Maluhu Ba'inan b'chdei she'asu. He says, you're right. It doesn't make any difference if that they're b'nei Torah or not b'nei Torah. Anything that a non-Jew does for you, even if it wasn't the main purpose of the myrtle, it was only for smelling the myrtle, they were only smelling the myrtle and all that, still you have to wait enough time. So therefore, although Ravina here was lenient for them, the rest of the sages felt that he should have been stringent upon them. Okay, good. So that concludes that topic of benefiting from work of non-Jews. And now we get to the question about mentioning Rosh Chodesh in the prayers for Rosh Hashanah. We'll see first a proof from Rabbi Dosa in our Mishnah, and then which says, yes, we should mention Rosh Chodesh. Then we'll see a proof from Bet Shammai's opinion about the number of barachot that says, no, we should not mention. We'll have a tangent there about including Rosh Chodesh with the other Amidas in general, and the conclusion is going to be no, that we do not mention Rosh Chodesh in our Rosh Hashanah prayers, in the Rosh Hashanah Amidah, and that's in fact what we do. Okay, so first the proof from Rabbi Dosa. Let me just show you the Mishnah, the original Mishnah that we learned yesterday. Here Rabbi Dosa says, Ha'oved lifnei teva b'yom tov shel Rosh Hashanah, Omer ha'chadisenu Hashem Elokeinu et Yom Rosh Chodesh hazeh im hayom im machar. So the Chazan, when he's preparing it, when he's saying his tefillah, he should say, God, strengthen us on this day of Rosh Chodesh. You see, even though he's talking about Rosh Hashanah, on this day of Rosh Chodesh, whether it's today or tomorrow, because we're not sure what day it is, and on the next day he says whether it was yesterday or today. So you see, he's saying there's two things that we're learning from Rabbi Dosa. First, that you mentioned Rosh Chodesh, and that you can make a conditional prayer. Right? Conditional prayer is kind of interesting. I'm only asking for this if the certain set of facts is true, otherwise not. So that was Rabbi Dosa, and so we're going to prove from here that he does actually mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah. So let's see what's involved in this. Okay, Rabbi Dosa says, that's what we just read. Amar Rabba, Ki avenan be Rav Huna, ibaya lan, mahu le'azkir shel Rosh Chodesh beRosh Hashanah. All right, this is not a new question. When we were in the home of Rav Huna, we were studying there. Often the rabbis got together and studied in a rabbi's home. He asked us, or should we mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah? It is, after all, the first of Tishrei. Kevan dechalukin b'musafin amrinan, or dilma zikaron echad ole lechan ulechan. So here's the two sides of the argument. On the one hand, they have different musaf sacrifices. There's a different number of parim that we bring on both, and you have to bring both of the sacrifices, Rosh Hashanah, in addition to Rosh Chodesh. And so therefore, since in the tefillah, especially the Musaf tefillah, we're giving mention of all the sacrifices we bring, and there are additional sacrifices, we should mention both of them. that's a reason to mention Rosh Chodesh. Or on the other hand, Zikaron Echad, both of them are called a Zikaron. Rosh Hashanah, as you know, is called Yom HaZikaron in the Torah, and Rosh Chodesh also in this pasuk in Bimidbar that says Yom Simchatem Adechem L'Shechotechem, but L'Shechotechem, right? On all holidays, including on Rosh Chodesh, we blow trumpets. Alolotechem v'alzivchei shemachem v'yu lachem lezikaron. Right. So the sacrifices of holidays, but also of Rosh Chodesh, is called a zikaron. So since Rosh Hashanah is called zikaron, Rosh Chodesh is called zikaron, we could just mention this is zikaron, and that will include both, and therefore we do not have to mention Rosh Chodesh specifically. That's the two sides of the argument. Okay, so, and Rav Huna said, Amalan tenetuha. Okay, so, right, this is a question that we all asked together, and we are at Rav Huna's house, and Rav Huna proposed an answer. Tenetuha, we learned this already in a Mishnah. My love last kid, Mishnah we just brought says, the Bidosa says, we mentioned, right, Rosh HaChodesh Hazeh. So doesn't that teach us that we are supposed to mention Rosh Chodesh? And we say, no, not. Maybe the Bidasa's point was that you can make a condition. He wasn't teaching us exactly what to say on Rosh Hashanah. Rather, his main chidush was that you make a condition. And don't pay attention so much to that. Maybe that only applies to regular Rosh Chodesh, not to a Rosh Hashanah. And in fact, וכן היה רבי דוסה עושה בראשי חודשים של כל השנה כולה ולא הודו לו. We have a braita that's similar, parallel to our Mishnah, that adds, Rabbi Dosa would say this formula not only on Rosh Hashanah, but all year long, every Rosh Chodesh, he would make a condition. Because every month, you never know, is it going to be a 29-day month, 30-day month? Is it going to be 1 day, 2 days? Rosh Chodesh, which day is it going to be? And so all year long, he would say, if today's Rosh Chodesh, then strengthen us today. Otherwise, if it's tomorrow. And so you see from there, since he did it all year long, that the point is that you are allowed to make a conditional prayer. And so we can't prove anything here from Rosh Chodesh itself. And see, it says they don't agree to him. Well, how come the sages did not agree? Well, what's wrong with mentioning Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Chodesh or throughout all the other 11 months? Why would the sages disagree? Obviously, it wasn't because he mentioned Rosh Chodesh. It's just about mentioning Rosh Chodesh. Why didn't they agree? So it must be that what they disagreed with was the condition. That was the problem. So that's his main point that we're learning. So so then what is the disagreement about? Is it about making a condition? Right, and everybody agrees that you should say Rosh Chodesh. Then why do I need both? Why would I need the Mishnah to tell me that he said the formula on Rosh Hashanah and the Braita that's to tell me that he said it all year long? Siricha. If I only had our Mishnah, I would say that that in this case on Rosh Hashanah, that's where the rabbis say, don't say this formula, this conditional formula, because then you're going to come to treat Rosh Hashanah lightly. If you say condition, either today's Rosh Hashanah or tomorrow's Rosh Hashanah, then one of the days you're not going to treat with, so you're not going to accept, you're going to do melacha on it, you're not going to treat it with as a serious day. And we don't want that to happen. So that's why the rabbis don't like that conditional statement on Rosh Hashanah. But the rest of the year, it's not a Yom Tov, it's no Isur Melacha. So if you're, you don't have to worry that the person is going to treat 1 day of Rosh Chodesh lightly. Maybe they'll agree with Rabbi Dosa that you can make such a conditional prayer. And if I only had the statement, the Braita, which says that during the other 11 months of the year, you can make a conditional formula. Maybe the Bidosa says you can only make a conditional formula in 11 months. But on Rosh Hashanah, maybe he agrees with Rabbanan that you might come to treat it lightly. And therefore he would say, even Bidosa would say not to say it. That's why we have to say it in both cases. Okay, so that's where we are so far. So back to our outline. What we just brought is a proof from Rabbi Dosa in our Mishnah that yes, you can mention Rosh Chodesh. And the fact that the rabbis disagreed, right, with him, they didn't disagree because they were against mentioning Rosh Chodesh. They were against the formula of making a conditional prayer, right? You should just mention each day, God strengthen us on today, Rosh Chodesh. And tomorrow you say, strengthen us today, Rosh Chodesh. And even though only one of those is actually Rosh Chodesh, it doesn't matter. We still say the prayers and treat both days as if they were actually Rosh Chodesh. And that's what we do. We say the same exact prayers on both days, and because we want to treat them both with equal sanctity. And so that is a proof that we should mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah. All right, but we're not done yet. Now we're going to bring a proof from Bet Shammai. מטיבה, ראש השנה שחל להיות בשבת, בית שמאי אומרים מתפלל 10, ובית הלל אומרים מתפלל 9. This is in fact what's going to happen this year, right? The first day of Rosh Hashanah is going to be on Shabbat. So usually on Shabbat, we have 7 brachot. The 3 beginning, 3 end are always the same. And the middle one, we say Mikadesh HaShabbat. Usually on Rosh Hashanah, a regular day, like Sunday, it's going to be 3 brachot at the end, and 3 brachot in the middle. Right? Now, what if they're together on the same day, Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah? So here, Bet Shammai says you have 10 berachot. The 3 in the beginning, the 3 at the end, they're always the same. And then you have 3 for Musaf, Rosh Hashanah, and 1 for Shabbat. Right? In other words, you add them all together. And so therefore you'd have 10. Bet Hillel says, Mitpalel Tesha. He says, no, only 9. And Shabbat you will include together with one of the berachot. That is what we do. Right, we still say 9, and we just add in, right, Mekadesh, HaShabbat, Ve'Yisrael, Ve'Yom HaZikaron. Okay, so, V'im'ita, Bet Shammai, 11 miba'ele. Now, if you think that we should mention Rosh Chodesh requires its own beracha. After all, let's say it was just Rosh Chodesh and nothing else. We'd have Musaf with 1 beracha in the middle, right? And we would mention Rosh Chodesh. So if we should mention Rosh Chodesh, and that's what you just concluded from before, then according to Bet Shammai, who does not combine berachot, you'd actually have to have 11 berachot if you had Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah, because it's Rosh Hashanah, that's 3, Shabbat is 1, Rosh Chodesh is 1. Right? And so that's 5 middle berachot plus the 6 on the outside. That's 11. And we right? He doesn't say that, but Shammai doesn't have that. Therefore, we should learn that we should include the Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, we should learn that we should not mention Rosh Chodesh at all. Because if you did mention Rosh Chodesh, it would have to be its own beracha. Because Bet Shammai does not use the inclusive principle. It doesn't include multiple things together in one beracha. Okay, that's the essence of the proof. We're going to go back and forth about it for a bit. Amar Bizera, Shane Rosh Chodesh, mitoch shekolel shacharit ve'arbit, kolel nameh b'musafin. The Bizera says, Rosh Chodesh is different from Shabbat. Shabbat, according to Bet Shammai, would require its own beracha. Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah would be 2 separate. But not Rosh Chodesh, because Rosh Chodesh and shacharit and arbit and mincha are all included within the beracha. It looks like here that when we pray, we include Rosh and include it in Yalev Yabo, right, which is the 3rd to last beracha. They say we include it there. It looks like over here they had a different custom that they included it in the middle beracha. Okay, so Rosh Chodesh for the other prayers we include it in the middle beracha. Therefore, in Musaf also we would include it in the middle beracha. And so even Bet Shammai would agree that you could have 10 altogether when Rosh Hashanah is Shabbat, 3 for Rosh Hashanah, one extra one for Shabbat, and you include Rosh Chodesh in the middle because Rosh Chodesh is different from the others. Okay. Mit lehu lebet Shammai kolel. Hold on. Does Bet Shammai even ever have the concept of including something within another? והתניא ראש חודש יכל להיות בשבת. בית שמאי אומרים מתפלל שמונה, ובית הלל מתפלל שבע, קשיא. No, it doesn't work because Bet Shammai does talk about this when you have Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat, not Rosh Hashanah, just those 2. So Bet Shammai says you have 8 berachot. How do you have 8? 3 and 3 at the beginning and the end, 2 in the middle, 1 for Shabbat, 1 for Rosh Chodesh. So you see, he would not include Rosh Chodesh in the middle. He includes it as a separate beracha. Therefore, on Rosh Hashanah, if you mention Rosh Chodesh at all, it would have to be its own beracha, and up above he would need 11 and not 10. And Bet Hillel says 7 because he does have inclusion. Therefore, that would be difficult. So we prove from here that for Bet Shammai, can't be that Bet Shammai thinks that you include Rosh Chodesh. And if so, it looks like everybody agrees, right? We're just using Bet Shammai as an in, but looks like that entire source does not assumes that we're not saying Rosh Chodesh, mentioning Rosh Chodesh. Okay, now that we really established this proof of no. Now we're just a tangent about including Rosh Chodesh with End Amidah generally is what we're going to ask about. We do it in Yaleh V'Yabo, but let's see what this says. V'cholel atzmo Tana'ehi. This whole thing about inclusion and where you include it is itself a machloket between Tanaim. The Tanya Shabbat shachal liot berosh chodesh or bechulo shel moed. Arabit shachrit u'mincha mitpalel kedarko sheba ve'omer me'en me'ora ba'avoda. So anytime you have Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh together, or if it's on Chol HaMoed, Shabbat on Chol HaMoed, so you always say seven berachot, right? Only one in the middle, and you mention Rosh Chodesh, or you mention the holiday, the Chol HaMoed holiday within Avodah, meaning that's Ritzeh, that's Yaleh V'Yabo. This is exactly what we do. The Eliezer Omer behoda'ah. He disagrees. He says that prayer, whatever it is, you put it in the next beracha of Modim. That's where we put Al Nisim. Okay, so that's very interesting. That instead of in the same place of Al Nisim, they would mention Rosh Chodesh instead of where we put Yaleh V'Yabo. And in those cases, if you forgot it, you have to go back and say it again. במוספין מתחיל בשל שבת ומסיים בשל שבת ואומר קדושת היום באמצע. Those were for the other three prayers. But for Musaf, we never say Yaleh V'Yabo in Musaf. That's in fact the case now. And instead, you mention it within Musaf, right? You talk about the korbanot, and you'll add, and also this Yom Tov or Rosh Chodesh Hazeh, Shabbat Hazeh. Okay, so good. That's all what we do. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ורבי ישמעאל בנו של רבי יוחנן בן ברוקה אומרים, כל מקום שזקוק לשבע, מתחיל בשל שבת ומסיים בשל שבת, ואומר קדושת היום באמצע. According to them, any time that you have only seven berachot, you start and end with Shabbat, and you mention the sanctity of the day. In other words, you add in, if it's Rosh Chodesh or if it's Chol HaMoed, you add that in the middle. In other words, you always add things in the middle for all the prayers. According to this, you never say Yaleh V'Yabo, right? This is a different tradition. This is the one that we were assuming above in this Baraita. Okay, so this is just really fascinating. We kind of take it for granted, Yaleh V'Yabo, but there was a whole nother tradition that said, if it was Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, it would have, even in Shachrit, not Le'aviyabo, but within that middle beracha, they would include both. Okay, that's the end of the tangent. Now, back to the regular question, back to our main question. Should we mention Rosh Chodesh in the prayers for Rosh Hashanah? We had one proof yes and one proof no. All right, now we're stuck. What should we do? Oh, so Ma'ha Ve'ala, what's the answer? אמר רב חיסדא, זיכרון אחד עולה לו לכאן ולכאן. וכן אמר רבא, זיכרון אחד עולה לו לכאן ולכאן. So, in fact, we do not mention Rosh Chodesh because it's also called zikaron, and essence of Rosh Hashanah is zikaron, so there's no need to mention it separately. The main point is already included. In other words, Rosh Hashanah, being the head of the whole year, already encompasses it being the beginning of a month, and so we don't mention it, and that is halacha l'maaseh. Okay, but people ask this question. It's like, we don't say Yaleh V'Yabo on Rosh Hashanah. How come? It's Rosh Chodesh after all, right? Okay, very good. So now we get to our next question. Zaman refers to Shehehiyanu, v'kiyaman regianu lazeman hazeh. So you say that when we're especially happy about something that that happens not on a regular basis, but only from time to time, that this is a special zman, and we're happy to have come around to a cycle that we can celebrate something good at this time. So does that apply to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? What are the options? Kevan de mizman lizman ate amrinan. Well, they only come around once a year, so they're on a cycle. So that would make sense that we should say it. Oh, we're happy that we arrived at another season, another Rosh Hashanah. Or dilma kevan de la ikru regalim la amrinan. But, or on the other hand, they're not called the Shalosh Regalim. Those are the 3 festival holidays that everybody goes and goes to Yerushalayim. They walk there, and so those are specifically, 3 different markings of the year that we celebrate. But these aren't one of them, and so maybe therefore we should not. They're not quite as celebratory, right? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, although they're Yom Tov, but they also have a very serious tone to them. So maybe they're different. Anyway, Lahav Abiyedeh, he didn't know the answer. Rav Huna didn't have an answer. So they had to continue pondering. Ki atai be Rav Yehuda. And they came to Rav Yehuda's house. Amar, Ana akara hadeta name amina zeman. And Rav Yehuda said, I say Shehehiyanu even on a new gourd, right? A new gourd plant, not even something so special. Anytime you get a new gourd plant. So the point is, if you say Shehehiyanu on just a simple gourd plant, then all the more so you would say it for Rosh Hashanah, right? Amrele reshut laka mibayali ki kemibayali choba mai. This is, our question was not whether you can, optional. We want to know whether it's an obligation to say it. Amali Ravu Shmuel. In other words, you don't have to go and get a gourd. You don't have to make a whole big deal out of it, right? So, okay, you could say it. Fine, at least we learned that you could say it. I guess if you're really especially happy. I mean, this ends up what we do. We don't, we like to find new fruits and things. Anyway, so we actually say Shehehiyanu. We do it in Kiddush, right? We do say Shehehiyanu for Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Amali Rav Ushmael Damret Harvayu and Omer Zeman Ela Beshalosh Regalim. And so, in fact, unlike Rav Yehuda, who said he likes to say it on the gourd, it doesn't matter. Have to say it? No, that's only for the 3 holidays, not Rosh Hashanah and not Yom Kippur. Okay, Rav and Shmuel don't bring a source, but that's their tradition. They say no. All right, but we're going to bring a proof from Pasuk in Kohelet that yes, and our conclusion is going to be yes, that we do say Shehehiyanu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. How are we going to do that on Yom Kippur? We'll see. Okay. So far we said no. Now here's the proof for yes. Metibe, 10 chelek l'shiv'a v'gam l'shmona. Pasuk in Kohelet that says, give something to 7 and 8. The context is you should always invest in things, always plant even 7, 8 times different fields. You never know which one's going to rain and which one's going to be successful. Try out lots of different diversified portfolio. Okay, but that's the pshat. But the Midrash is taking it differently. Give to God something of 7 and something of 8. What is that referring to? Shiv'a elu shiva yemei bereshit. Shemona elu shemona yemei milah. So 7 refers to the 7 days of creation. So one of the days, Shabbat, that we give to Hashem. And 8 refers to the 8 days before Brit Milah. On the Brit Milah, on the 8th day, we give something to Hashem. That's what it's referring to. That's Rabbi Eliezer. Second interpretation relevant to us, Rabbi Yoshua Omer Shiv'a elu shiv'a yemei Pesach. Shemona elu shemona yemei Chag. 7 and 8 refer to Pesach and Sukkot. Sukkot is 8 days, 7 days plus Shemini Atzeret. So we give those days. These are special days. Omer v'gam lerabot Atzeret v'Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. In the pasuk it says Shiva v'gam Shemona. That extra word gam, it could have just said Shiva v'Shmona. What's v'gam? Gam comes to include Aseret, which is Shavuot, and Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. So there you go. Now all of these are included together. And what is the point of give? What are we doing special on these days? My love, Lizman, does it not mean that we say Shehehiyanu on that? Okay, he didn't say anything about Shehehiyanu up here. Okay, but point is we're going to be especially happy that these times came, and we're going to say Shehehiyanu. Says, no, lo libracha. No, it's just a blessing we say over the day. We mention the blessing in the tefillah. It doesn't have to be any blessing. It doesn't have to be Shehehiyanu specifically. And hachina mistabera. And in fact, it makes sense that it's not necessarily Shehehiyanu. Tisakadatech lizman. Zeman, kol shiva mi'ika. If you think it's Shehehiyanu, what, do you say Shehehiyanu every day of Pesach? Do you say it every day of Sukkot? We don't do that. We only say it on the first day. In Galut, we say it on the first 2 days, because the first 2 days are each considered like that could be the first day of Yom Tov. But the point is, we don't say it all the days, so that doesn't make sense. Halakashya, but actually we can disprove that. Actually, those are makeup days. If you forgot to say Shehehiyanu on the first day, you can still say second day, third day. You can say it any time. Say it any day on the holiday. We usually like to say it in the beginning. That's all. But in fact, all of the days are worthy of Shehehiyanu. So it could be that this is a good source to say Shehehiyanu. We reject that again. But we have a tradition that whenever you say Shehehiyanu, you should say it on a cup of wine. You should say, right, Sabri Maranan, Gefen, and then say Shehehiyanu. And so that's only going to do when you have a cup of wine, when you're saying Kiddush. That's what we do. So this is the source why we say Shehehiyanu with Kiddush. But during the middle of the week, you might not be having wine. There's no mitzvah of Kiddush, and so it doesn't make sense. You're not going to be that to apply Shehehiyanu all week long. Lema Mesaya Le Rav Nachman, Damar Rav Nachman Zeman, Omro Afilu Bashuk. Well, this could possibly fit the opinion of Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman says you can say Shehehiyanu anytime, even in the marketplace. It does not have to be with a cup of wine. That's what we do also. We say Shehehiyanu, a new fruit, a new suit. You just say Shehehiyanu. You don't have to go get a cup of wine to say Shehehiyanu. So maybe it still could be, and we'll follow Rav Nachman, and all week long during the holiday you can still say Shehehiyanu. Halakashya dikla le kos. But actually, we don't even have to go that far. We can say that even during the week, if you forgot to say Shehehiyanu, you'll go get some wine and you'll say it with wine. Okay, so the wine thing is not an issue. It's not a stumbling block. So really, it could still apply to Shehehiyanu, and could be a proof that we should say Shehehiyanu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, as it says it here. All right, so far so good. But Hatenach Aseret v'Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim Hechi Abid. Okay, fine. You got it. Rosh Hashanah and Shavuot. We're gonna say Kiddush, and we're gonna say Gefen. We're gonna say Shehehiyanu. After we say Gefen, we're gonna drink the wine. That's all good. But how about Yom Kippur, when you can't eat and can't drink? There is no Kiddush. So how are you gonna say Shehehiyanu? And if you follow Rav Nachman, it's okay because you can say Shehehiyanu without it. But assuming now that it has to be with wine, there's no way to say it on Yom Kippur. So what are you going to do? If you'll say, maybe I'll say it before the fast starts, before sunset, I'll say a kind of kiddush, I'll say a gefen and Shehehiyanu and drink it. Is that possible? No, you can't do that, because the second you say a blessing over the time, then you're already accepting the holiday, right? Saying Shehehiyanu is a way of accepting upon yourself the holiday, and you can accept it early, right? If you start the fast like Shabbat, you can start it early, and we prove that. One time it was an actual case where it was before sunset, and it seems it was cloudy, and they thought it was dark. Anyway, he said, "Did you say kiddush?" It's called badalt, means to separate. We know that word from havdalah. We usually think of havdalah at the end, but havdalah means separating, and we were also separating at the beginning of Shabbat between chol before, and now we're starting Shabbat. So kiddush is also called mi badalt. Did you say kiddush? And he said yes. Oh, if you said kiddush, then you accepted Shabbat, and even though it's still daylight out, doesn't matter, Shabbat was accepted. Same is true for Shehehiyanu, so it's impossible to say Shehehiyanu with wine on Yom Kippur before Yom Kippur starts, because then it's going to kick in as soon as you say Shehehiyanu and you can't drink the wine. So how about Libroch Alev Velanche? Oh, how about, so we'll say a gefen and we'll leave it. I won't drink it, right? I'll leave the wine till after Yom Kippur and not drink it at all. That can't be hamavarech she'ich she'it om. As halacha, if you said the beracha, you have to taste from it. You can't say a beracha and not eat it. That's a beracha lebatala. There's actually a lot of discussion. What if by mistake on a fast day you said a beracha and then you remember it's a fast day before you ate, right? Should you drink a little just so that you don't violate this beracha lebatala? Okay, that's an interesting question. Anyway, so you can't just on purpose drink say the beracha and not drink it. Rather, so maybe you give it to a child, right? So because when I'll say Shehehiyanu, when I say Shehehiyanu, I accepted the fast, but I'll give it to a little kid, and the little kid will drink it. No, that's not good. Because after all, isn't the halacha in accordance with Rabacha? And he said, you shouldn't train children the wrong way, right? Maybe you'll give him something to drink and he'll say, oh, now he'll become a drunkard, he'll like wine. Or he'll eat on Yom Kippur in the future, right? Even little kids, you shouldn't train them to do something negative. So that's not a good option either. All right, so therefore, Yom Kippur is going to be throw a wrench into this discussion. But now we want to finally figure out, what do we do? Shedaru Rabbanan Rav Yemar Saba Kamed Rav Chista b'Ma'alei Yoma Deresh Shata. Okay, so we didn't resolve that question about how to do it on Yom Kippur, but actually what we could do is not say it with Kiddush, right? We could just say it alone, which is what we do. We say during Kal Nidreh, right? We say Shehehiyanu. So without wine, right? And that's the Shehehiyanu for the day, for Yom Kippur. Okay, but so what are we going to conclude? Because we had different solutions. We had some said no, and some said yes. And now we have a story that the rabbis told Rav Yemar, it says, go to Rav Chista and spy on him, right? Go check out what he does. Let's see, right? We don't have a tradition, but let's see what Rav Chista does and see. Let us know. Bring back the report whether he says Shehehiyanu or not. So, so we go to Emalan. So he goes there for Rosh Hashanah. Ki chazeh amar le daluya le'ertiba rafsa le'beduchte. Okay, Rav Chista gives him some sharp words. He says, if you pick up a moist log, then means you don't want the log, you want the place where it was, right? In other words, yeah, I know what your intention is, right? If you're picking up a moist log, is not good for firewood. So obviously, if you're picking it up, you don't want the wood itself. Rather, it's a roundabout. You want the place. You want to put something else there. You want to sit there. So the fact that you've come here, you don't usually pray here on Rosh Hashanah. So this is unusual that you're here. I know it looks like you want to be here to pray, but I know you have ulterior motives. You're really here to check out what my custom is, something like that. Okay. Anyway, Aitule kasad chamra kadesh v'amar zeman. Well, sure enough, they brought him the cup of wine after the tefillah, and he said kiddush, including Shehehiyanu. So there you go. He said Shehehiyanu on Rosh Hashanah, and so now we could use that as a proof. Hilchata omer zeman beRosh Hashanah veYom Kippurim. Hilchata zeman omero afilu bashuk. So this is a halacha, and it's exactly what we do. That we do say Shehehiyanu on all of the holidays. All the Shalosh Regalim, and also Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Although they are serious days, they're also holidays. We're also very happy to when they come around, and so we feel blessed that we can experience this time. And the halacha is also that you can say Shehehiyanu anytime. You don't need to have a cup of wine to say it, and that's how we can say it on Yom Kippur during the fast. When we say it at night over Kol Nidreh, that's kind of like the replacement that we use when we don't have Kiddush to say. All right, so good. We got a lot of useful information, so to appreciate our tefillot much better.